Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this morae webinar. My name is Walter Pulowski. I'll be your website moderator for today. I'm a customer solutions engineer here at TechSmith, and with me here is Jeremy Vanasacker. He's the product manager for morae. In our audience, we also have Mr. David Wecker. He's the project manager for the product. So as we go through the webinar today and Jeremy's showing you the features and functions of the software, if you have any questions, we'd encourage you to use the Q&A portion of the webinar software. So just go ahead and feel free at any point to use the Q&A section and go ahead and ask any questions you may have. Towards the end, we'll make sure that we give you time to bring those questions up. We'll ask Jeremy and Dave those questions. And in the meantime, if you'd like to continue a conversation with other morae users, you can use the hashtag morae. And so in Twitter, if you'd like to go ahead and send out a tweet and ask how other people may be using the software or some things that they're using it for, just use that hashtag morae to do that in Twitter. So with that, I'd like to welcome Jeremy. Thanks for joining us today, Jeremy.
Well, thanks, Walter. Very happy to be here and show off morae a little bit for everybody. So what we'll do real quick is I'll kind of take you through a little bit of an overview of morae, talk about some of the different use cases for morae and the areas that it's used in, and then give you a demo, and then hopefully leave some time for questions. So briefly about TechSmith. So we've been in business about 21 years, and a lot of our solutions, maybe you've heard of Snagit and Camtasia Studio, are used in a lot of Fortune 500 companies. So we're not new to the software industry, and we're excited to continue to be here located in Michigan. So a little bit about the areas of how morae is used. The primary one, which we'll be talking about today, is this idea of usability testing. So whether you're talking about testing how usable a website is or a software application is, we do internal testing on our software products with morae, or paper prototyping using an external camera. Qualitative market research using this external camera feed that hooks into morae and synchronized notes is very good if you're out in the field. The United States Air Force Academy uses this for some of their training. And then Lean Six Sigma, picture a call center. This is all about measuring business processes and how efficient, effective things are from the time they enter into queue to the time they're resolved. So, like I said, we'll be focusing on usability testing, but these are the three, I would say, primary areas that morae can be used for.
One of the first days I was here at TechSmith, I participated in a usability study for Camtasia Studio, and it was moderated, and then some of the Camtasia Studio developers were watching in another room and seeing exactly what I did. So there's nothing like using your own software, in this case using our software to make our software better.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We try and be leaders in visual communication, and so what better way to do that with providing the tool to sort of measure that effectiveness of your own tools. So.
Excellent.
So just real briefly, I won't go into any of these in depth, but you can see the URL up there so you can find examples of how different people in different industries are using our software. If you look at under software and technology, SAP, they roll it out to their user group annually, and they conduct over 5,000 sort of participants to get feedback on their stuff, and so it's pretty powerful. We're also leaders in the education as far as how to roll out usability. Missouri has a great usability lab. Healthcare is pretty big right now, considering that with the electronic medical records and trying to get those widely adopted. So we'll talk a little bit about some of this stuff, but just want to give you an overview, give you that URL so you can check those out. There's some great stuff there, all the way from consulting, the education, and even a little bit about the Lean Six Sigma that we mentioned earlier. So to give you an idea of how usability was conducted before morae, there was a lot of hardware set up, and so this is an example of what the University of Indiana did beforehand. And if you look, this is so we showed you a picture of some of the hardware. This map is just a wireframe of all the different hardware that was used. And so you don't really need to look at anything in particular, but just know that all this really meant there was a bunch of stuff that had to be used. And so there's a lot of complex hardware, high cost, it wasn't very portable, and there was no way to really measure things and understand them in a way that morae enables you to. So kind of some of the advantages of morae is that it's complete and cost effective. You have a laptop, if you'd like a webcam, such as I have up here, and we really support these multiple different research methods as far as qualitative focus groups and usability on software or websites. Pretty flexible. You can take it out into the field because it is on a laptop, and then pretty easy to use, and especially when you compare it to how usability studies used to be. So quickly, the overview of the different components. There's the recorder, and we'll go into all of this stuff in more detail, but there's a recording component, an observing component, and this manager component. And manager is kind of where you bring in your recordings and your observer piece and analyze things like that. So how it works is somebody sets up a morae recording on a test participant's computer, and they define what they want. And everything's kind of centered around this task. So you have them log into a website. You have them go through a purchase process or something like that. And whether you want a webcam to see their facial expressions, which we'll show off here in a little bit. And from there, you have this remote observer component. We put together a little video to show you how that works. But anything that is being recorded on a test computer, anybody else out there can see who's connected to that computer. And that's super powerful, especially we use that a lot internally, where we'll have developers and designers and product management look and see how people are trying to interact with the software. And this really brings this collaboration component to morae that I think really sets it apart. And so that's pretty special. So you bring that stuff in. Observers can log notes. Everything's time synced. They can put markers or points of interest in there. And then you get all the data that is recorded on the screen of what you see and what you don't see. So think mouse clicks, mouse movement, screen text, time on a particular task we automatically record. And then what we're able to do is bring all that in. You can create video clips, you can create slides, and then share that out to a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. And then using our hosting solution, screencast.com, you can easily share those results over the internet. So a couple things that people may or may not be aware of is this sort of flexibility in morae. And two things I'd like to highlight is this plugin architecture and the COM server interface. This plugin architecture, we've had a couple eye tracking companies recently kind of want to work better with morae. One is Visual Interaction, another one is Tobii Technology. And so what you're able to do here is track the gaze plot. So as I'm looking at something, a dot will appear, and you can track that over time. And the plugin allows us to work with that hardware. We also have something available on our website. You see an example up there towards the top of the screen of how to draw the mouse path with the mouse and as it moves around. So you can see that example. The COM server really allows you to customize morae in a way that say, okay, I only want certain people to be able to use certain functions within my organization, give it a custom interface, and so now it's able to be flexible within your own organization where you don't have to show off all the different components of morae to the tester, to the participant, or anything like that. And down there you see a little bit more about the technical documentation if you want to do some more integration and have morae fit into your organization.
So if they have a tech-savvy person within their organization and they want to kind of adapt morae to fit their needs, maybe some customers are already doing this in certain ways in their organization, but now with the introduction of morae, they want it to adapt and fit within their own processes, they can go ahead and do that with this COM architecture.
That's correct. So you could set it up and you could have something look and feel like your organization for an interface. You can just limit the options, say, okay, I only want 2 options for these people to do. So that's the flexibility that we enable.
Excellent.
To talk a little bit more about the eye tracking piece, because with the 3.3, we definitely have better integration, and that's pretty cool as far as when you talk about usability and expanding our solution suite. what these do, Toby enables you to display the eye gaze data on recorder and manager. And so you see those circles on there, and so the circles get bigger the longer somebody looks at a particular spot. And then you'll be able to take that from recorder and view those on an individual basis per participant in manager. And they currently have 6 hardware options that work with morae. The other eye tracking option is with visual interaction. And what they've done is they've really done this full integration. So the software component is morae, where they don't have their own software that works with it. And then the hardware piece is super portable. It's this small piece as you see on your screen, and you can put it on any computer or display. And so what they've done is integrate that, and then those gaze plot data that we saw on the previous screen, now you can see that on Observer, which is pretty important. So people observing it can also now talk about it, add some chat to it, and really collaborate around where people are actually looking as opposed to taking action too. So it's pretty cool. So what I'll do now is I'll pull up and kind of demo a little bit for you.
Before we do that, yep. I'd just like to remind our viewers out there that we do have the PM and the PJM here in the room, so if you have questions as Jeremy's walking you through the demo and showing you the different features, please feel free to use the Q&A portion of the webinar software to ask those questions. We'll make sure we get to all of those at the end, and if you want to have a conversation offline with some, well, still online, but outside of the webinar software, if you want to have a conversation with other morae customers, you can do that on Twitter. Just use the hashtag morae and ask some other questions that from other customers about how they might be using it. So.
Great, thanks, Walter. So we'll walk you through the recorder piece, the observer piece, and then the manager piece. What I have up in front of you is our recorder piece. And as you can see over here, this video and audio source. So there's 3 sections here. There's controlling the inputs. There's the study details, which enables you to keep consistency across multiple participants. And then there's the recording details, which enables you to be flexible depending on your environment. So if I was to do a new study configuration, we have this default already set up. We also have, we can be very specific to your environment. So if you see these study details over here, let's say you want a focus group. What we try and do is be a little bit smart, and now you see the camera is the main source, and then we enable another camera over here which is not plugged in. If we were to do a different study configuration, let's go to the very common one with the usability study. We try and be smart about the camera input, the task, and the markers or the points of interest that you would like. So to make the point, let's just go to something that we already have loaded. So this is something, just a purchase process that we'd like to walk somebody through. You see over here now how we go into the study details. And if you go to the task definitions, remember everything's based around these tasks that you want the participant to execute something in particular. You see over here that we have all these tasks where you can edit the descriptions, you can edit the names, and you can change the markers a little bit. So we added a participant frustration point where you can change these. So that's pretty powerful to keep consistency, so you don't have to, you set it up once, you save it, and you can bring it up for every single participant, so you remain, like we said, consistent. And these recording details is very cool. We have something called autopilot, and so if we wanted to do this, you could go to autopilot where you automatically, the participant is prompt to execute certain things, and so that helps if you're at a kiosk, which is sort of common. You can also start different recordings in the test upon different events. So if you say, okay, in a scenario where it's unmoderated, say I want to start the study as soon as they open up this web browser, a .exe or a different program, we can start that study automatically too.
So at a conference, for instance, somebody could have a computer set up and say we're asking questions about X, and somebody could just walk up and perform that study without anybody even being there with them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, picture conversations going on one side of and kiosk set up on the other side with a sign said, "Hey, usability study, walk on up and try, and they could just go, and there would be instructions prompted on the screen, and people could just go from there, and you could collect data like that.
All right, great.
So this is an overview of the recording piece to get you set up, be adaptable to your environment, and then kind of talk about what we were talking about, Walter. Now, if you wanted that same study in a more controlled environment, you could keep the same tasks, the same markers, and things like that, and just then take it where there is a moderator. And so that's the power of this recording details up here. So the next piece I want to show you is the observer piece, and to show you that effectively, there's a short video that I'll kind of walk you through. But essentially, if you're on the same network, you can remotely stream what is going on a test participant screen. You can log, like I said, time-synced notes, time-synced markers. That'll come up.
And you can have one or more observers. You can have multiple observers observing at the same time.
Yes, you can have many observers, and you can have observers that aren't even located in the same building so long as they're on the same network. So one healthcare company had testing going on in North California and developers observing in South California. So it's powerful so long as you're on the same network.
I know that when I was doing my studies for Camtasia Studio, I believe there were developers in different rooms. I don't know exactly how many, but as far as I was concerned, I was only working with the moderator. So it felt very personal, but at the same time, they were able to get information to the people that could make a real difference in the software right away, the developers, by watching the frustration points or the points where it was a little confusing to me. So.
Okay, so what you see here is what you'll see as soon as you pull up the observer component. When you pull that up, it'll prompt you to log in via the IP address to remotely observe, as you see there. And then once you do that and you connect to that computer, you'll see here that you're watching, everything here is you're watching the test participant's computer. And so here again, the grayed out area is the test participant's computer, and then you'll see some other things to the left, to right, to the bottom. That is where you can take your notes in the chat. And the arrow that was just drawn shows you the autopilot, so the automatic testing display that observers will see to start the task. To the left is your marker key, and you can see as you enter different notes and different things, you see a couple errors down there as people are walking through it, just kind of remind you of what the different markers are.
And it looks like there's some hotkeys, so
yeah,
you can set your own hotkeys for certain observations as you're watching that participant.
Right, so it makes it super easy. You can also be in the chat dialog that you see to the right there, and then do your hotkeys. And so what you're able to do here is after each question, and then after the test is completed, there's surveys, and we come preloaded with the system usability scale, which measures satisfaction. That is something we did not invent that's industry, usability industry standard that we simply automate and put in there to morae at the end of the study. And Walter, what's great is you can do tailored surveys, you can do things that are customized at the end to do your own sort of spin on things. And what you see here is this is the observer piece. Remember, as soon as you're done, it'll prompt you if you want to make any last-minute edits to anything as far as your notes are concerned. And then once you do that, you save them to the observer computer, and then you can load those on and into Manager at a later date.
And just so our audience knows, this was something that we had recorded just a couple of days ago. It's kind of difficult to demo the observer piece live because you got different machines, at the same time, and we'd be switching back and forth with the webinar. But this is just something that we recorded as a group the other day to show you that piece of the software of Observer.
Right. So that's a great point. Difficult to demo, but awesome power. So hopefully you got a flavor of that with that little video. The last thing I want to talk about, then we'll definitely take questions here, is the manager piece. And this is where you can bring in that recording and everything that's recorded on the screen, whether it's screen text, my face, as you saw there with the web camera, and then mouse clicks, page changes, and bring that in on all the participants and aggregate that. You also bring in the notes and all the different markers. So as you see here in the middle of your screen, these are all the different markers. And these are all the different timestamps if we wanted to jump to anything. And I'm actually a big fan of this view right here. And what's neat about this is any point that I click on it, not sure how well it's showing up, but you see the bold line here is the recording I'm on and the participant I'm on. And then you go to another point here, and it goes to that recording. And so if you want to look at the search and search for particular things, let's say we just want to look for errors. So I go here, I go to marker type, and I just want to find all the errors where people are having problems. And this pulls up all the errors that we can see across all the different participants.
And those include, you could have all the custom markers that people had created before. Okay.
Yes, any marker that you put in here. What's also neat is mouse clicks is becoming a particularly hot thing. So people want to see where all the mouse clicks are happening. And so you can, there's an exceptional amount of mouse clicks here. And so you can go to that and you can review this right from here like that. So you have this, and so this is where you can also edit any notes that you have in here. You can add markers to different things. You can also save a video clip and save out a still image. So you take that and you bring it into our graph view. And so we come preloaded with, we look at satisfaction with this SUS, efficiency, which is time on task, effectiveness, which is the success percentage rate, and then the error rate, which is also a measure of success. And so you can kind of break these down by participant. I like to look at, let's look at, we can look at mouse clicks again, and we can do this, look at them by participant. We can take off the average, and so what you see here is task 2 there was a lot of clicks on task 2, and so you might think about reviewing what they did, and if you're trying to get somebody from A to B, you might say, okay, there's an awful lot of clicks in that stream, and you might want to think about making that process more efficient in design. You can also see that, so you can just search on different ways for that one. We do not want to keep those. And then here's where all of this, your setup and recorder, the observer notes, and your analysis piece all kind of come together. And this is where you can create a highlight video to export to PowerPoint, to export to Word. We have screencast.com that you can send your results off to and password protect that and share that with a client. But this is where you can put together key things, because at the end of the day, video doesn't lie. You can have opinion all you want, and opinion's good, but when you're able to collaborate around Observer, everybody's able to see the same thing or the same thing happening over and over, it's really a powerful thing and helps enact change. So that's kind of an overview of morae, and with that, if there's any questions that we have, Walter.
Well, let me throw that out there again, that we do have our Q&A section, and if you can go ahead and submit any questions you have. We've had a few come in already. While we're doing that, would you like to show us some of the resources that we have available online to draw upon?
Thank you for that, Walter. I almost forgot. So we will pull this sort of thing up. What we have here is, you can see the URL up here. The different resources that are at your disposal are these different case studies. Here, this is a focus on the Lean Six Sigma. But all what I showed you at the beginning, here's where you can read more and go in depth into all of those different scenarios. Whether you're a consultant or want to focus on usability internally, there's some great stuff here. It talks about results, talks about what the need was of the customer and how morae helped solve that. More documentation about the plugins. As you see here, the draw the mouse path, developer resources, and then if you scroll to the bottom, more about the COM server. And then here, the links provided and up there, this helps you bring, a lot of times you have to sell usability internally. You know, what's the ROI on this? And this is actually an academic paper that takes out a couple companies that have proven the ROI to usability. They talked about their cost savings as far as $1 of testing was able to save them $2 in implementation down the road or something to that effect. Okay. And then here is where you can enter feedback. So you see we have a lot of feedback up here for Morae already. But if you have any thoughts about it, any suggestions, this is a great place. I'm on here regularly. The team checks in with this to get you also get you answers. So
great. So we'll take some questions now from Michelle. Michelle asks, can you review the differences between Morae and Camtasia? It seems like you could do some of the same functions with Camtasia, and what would be some of the benefits of maybe using Morae over Camtasia for usability specifically?
Sure. That's a great point. And actually, to be frank, Morae kind of came from how people were trying to use Camtasia very early on. And so one of the ways is that while Camtasia, you can take a recording of the screen, what it doesn't capture keystrokes. Morae recordings don't capture mouse clicks. Morae recordings...
Or Camtasia recordings.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah, hold on. Camtasia recordings don't capture keystrokes. Camtasia recordings don't capture mouse clicks. They don't capture screen text or page changes. And so if you're looking to do that sort of in depth, it's called RRT in Morae, Rich Recording Technology. And so Morae automatically records all that stuff. You don't have to think about it. So that way you can bring that up into your, you see this and the manager graph, all of these different things that Morae is able to capture. Additionally, that observer piece that comes with a Morae license, you're able to stream that video live to people who you want to see on the same network, where they can enter notes and information and then bring that into Manager. That collaboration piece isn't really available in Camtasia Studio.
And something that you were showing me earlier when we prepared for this webinar is that ability to differentiate between the people that you're testing. There might be one person that's having difficulty on task 2, and I think it was in that section down here where you were able to show based on by task or by function that you were measuring. Where were the difficulties? And was it just that one user that was maybe blowing it out of proportion when you look at the averages, or just that one task, and getting a better understanding, a real better understanding, because you have the data that you can compare against? Whereas with Camtasia Studio, I mean, you would really just have the video, right?
Correct. Yeah. There's this video that you can watch after the production is done, and so that's really one of the strengths of Morae, is that you have all that data that comes with it, and so if you just need to record something and show it to somebody later, that's where that comes about. But if you're looking for all that data and you're looking to really look at the individuals and grab how successful they were, how efficient they were at what you wanted them to do, that's where Morae really comes into strength.
Okay, so I think that. Michelle, I think the short answer is if all you're doing is really getting that recording, if that's the most important thing for you, I think Camtasia Studio would work fine. If all of that other information, all of the clicks and the success rates and things like that are important, then Morae is a much better tool for that. We have a question from a user. Can you describe what paper prototyping is, and can you do that with Morae?
Sure. So paper prototype is a type of usability study. And what you do is you use an external camera, so whether it's a digital video cam with a tripod setup that sits over a piece of paper. And this is really a way to do mock-ups and have somebody interact, have a participant or participants interact with a physical object. And so you have a camera sitting over some paper, and users click, or participants click on the piece of paper, and each time they do something, you swap out to the next screen, and you go through that. It's a way to look at how users would particularly do something, and it's just a different way to mock things up rather than having to interact with a mouse and clicks and a keyboard. It's to give that tactile feedback to the user, and it's a different way to do usability studies.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question from John. Is it necessary to purchase multiple licenses to have multiple observers watching the same study from different locations within the company? How does the licensing work there for Observer?
Good question. So after you buy the initial license, the morae license, which is Recorder, Manager, and Observer, we then license the different components separately. And so we can hook you up with sales to talk about those, but essentially, a lot of companies will start out with having one manager, maybe 2 recorders, and 5 or 6 observers. And as the need for this sort of thing grows, then you can expand, maybe expand to 3 managers, 5 recorders, and 15 observers. And so we do license, after the initial license, all of those separately.
Okay. And the observers it's a concurrent license, so you can have 3 people watching at the same time.
Oh, correct, correct. As long as they're on different machines, you can have many different observers running. I'm trying to think of it, 15 sort of observers trying to connect. And the best way to connect is through a landline. So while it does stream over Wi-Fi, the best thing is to be hardwire plugged in so multiple observers can be observing as best as possible.
That's always a safe bet. On this webinar, we're connected via landline. We could use wireless, but yeah, don't trust that for many reasons. You kind of addressed the fact that the questions that you ask, essentially the tasks that you're measuring, can be customized, and the questions that you ask at the end of the survey can be customized. Can you just do away with those questions altogether if they're done and you just want, maybe it's a walk-up sort of a situation where they perform their function? Can you just say thank you and have them move on? Are all those options customizable, including not even showing the questions at the end?
Yes, you can disable that survey function.
Okay.
If that is best for your environment, especially if you want to get through multiple participants, or that part isn't necessarily as important to you as in the success rate is your most important thing, and you just say, okay, their satisfaction is great, but for this purposes, we're more focused on successfully completing a task.
Okay. How can a user share out their footage or results? Maybe not just from a video standpoint, but from some of the data that maybe is captured with Morae. How would they go about sharing that?
Well, we do come with some of these preloaded graphs, and you can look at these sort of different things. And so we're looking at the error rate right now. So you would look at task 3. There was a high error rate, so that's something we might want to look at. So we come with these histograms already, and that is actually something we're looking into improving. So if you have any suggestions, please let us know. But these graphs, and remember, everything is task-based in Morae right now, and so this error rate comes from a moderator, observers entering in, hey, this was an error. And so these graphs are very powerful. Exporting to PowerPoint or a Word document for something that happens afterwards is very good. That gives you some flexibility as far as showing these different screenshots. The mouse trail, the draw plugin, is very neat to show in a still shot or a screen image for that. And so you have our histograms, and you have the still images, and then you obviously have the video or the PowerPoint piece. That's very powerful.
You've got somebody that's really into the data. Are there capabilities of exporting this information into Excel if they wanted to manipulate it in some way?
Not readily at this time.
Okay.
And so that is especially task notes. A lot of people like to export task notes right now, and that's something that we're looking into. Okay.
Mobile is really important now. Mobile's exploding. Obviously, you know that.
Yep.
Mobile PM as well. And we're doing a lot here internally. What could people use Morae to analyze the effectiveness of a mobile app, and how would they do that? How could they set that up?
So there's definitely some challenges as far as getting on somebody's phone, because really right now a huge powerful piece of morae is this rich recording technology where we capture when somebody clicks on something. With the eye tracking integration, you can see where people are looking. And so there's some unique challenges to mobile as far as getting something to run where you can capture this. But right now what we're able to do is, because you're allowed multiple camera sources, you can have morae set up and you can do mobile testing where you have a camera sitting over a phone and moderate that. You have to be careful with the lighting, so it's best to have your camera on a slight angle so you don't get direct overhead lighting, and that forces the phone on a little bit of an angle. But you can do that sort of feedback and you see where the users are clicking and doing that, which the camera and that sort of thing helps with that. You can also take notes in regards to that sync up. So as far as bringing the robustness of morae with the RRT, we're not there. But as far as being able to do something because of the external camera, we do have that solve that problem.
Okay, great, thank you. We've got a question. What cameras can our customers use with morae? Is there a list somewhere, or what do they need to have to make that work? In terms, like, what are we using?
So right now we're using a Logitech webcam. We do allow FireWire for digital video. One thing we do not support very well is HDMI right now, so that's something we're also looking into. But digital video camera and any webcam, we talk about the Logitech brand right now, as that works the best for us.
Okay. I think you've addressed this a little bit thus far. A customer thinks that they only need the recorder because they want to record what they're doing. What are some of the advantages, or what are some of the benefits of using Manager?
Yeah, I would say if you think you just need recorder, then as we kind of talked about, Camtasia Studio is probably your best bet, because you're just getting the recording and then you can share that out. But the Manager piece, I like to say this is where the magic happens. So this is where you can bring in all the data from all the different observers, as we talk about that collaboration piece, and you can create highlight videos you see here. You can create these different graphs, and then across multiple participants. So that think about it. It's not just this. You had a recording, and then Dave has a recording, and then Charles has a recording. It's all of you have the same test setup, the same tasks, which you can do manually, but then you bring all of that recording data in, mouse clicks, page changes, keystrokes, and you're able to analyze that over all of the different participants, as you kind of see here, and clicking in the different spots, and then looking at, as you see, with like all of these, and you're able to search that and really find out the key areas of interest with your test.
So without Manager, you're really not taking advantage of all that extra metadata that was being captured.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that's where it all kind of comes together, so you can present your results, so you can then take away show key takeaways to all the stakeholders involved, and that's really where sort of the power is realized, if you will. So.
Okay. If somebody wants to do testing with their test participant in a different location, can that be done?
Yes. We have there's a case study on there where people were going out to different locations on a laptop and just saving things locally, so you can do, recordings, you can travel around, and you can save things locally, and you can bring them into Manager later. Also, if you're in a different physical location, but the same company on the same internet, then you can remotely stream that. And so really, a laptop and morae is kind of your own one sort of usability suite that is ultra portable to get it out there.
Okay. We've got a question from, forgive me if I mispronounce this, Surev. Any tips for a good connection between observer and recorder?
The best tip is definitely, we talked about this, is the hard line is probably the best. We do have some quality settings. It also helps if there is not a picture-in-picture, because sometimes that can cause a lag. And so I would say those are the two big things. Make sure you're plugged in, And then if you really want that high streaming capability, I would do best quality. And then if the test participant does not have a webcam, that also helps.
It's just a lot of extra data.
Just a lot, that's going through your network, and it's just everything you add, audio is another, anything you add, it's just trying to put through those pipes is challenging.
Yeah, so. Speaking as a computer nerd, there are a lot of different things that can affect your bandwidth, and to minimize those things by being hardwired, those are always good ideas. We have a question about this user wants to see all their test participants at the same time on the same screen. Is that possible?
That is not possible to aggregate all that on the same screen. I could see maybe like I'm just kind of thinking aloud here, something we could implement where it would be maybe a still or something of a bunch of thumbnails on the same screen or something like that. But there's nothing, we don't support anything like that right now. There's a request to sort of, you see the eye gaze data that we show you to try and aggregate a heat map. That's something we're talking with our partners about. There's some unique challenges because it's the computer screen is not static. It scrolls different sizes. It's not a page. It's or a hard page. There's a lot of digital things that you have to account for. So short answer, we do not support that. And we'd definitely be interested feedback to help us understand more of how that's valuable to you and really ideally what you'd like to see. That sort of information is always helpful to us to understand how and if we can solve that problem.
Okay. What if the customer wants to test a focus group? It's a focus group, you want to do a recording. Could you have multiple cameras in play there, or is it just that kind of high-level camera that shows everyone, or can you have maybe a camera that shows a person asking a question and then you can zoom out to the big picture?
I'm actually really glad you mentioned that, particularly because our manager comes preloaded with what's called an example project. It's already in there, and so you can load that up, and as you see here, there's these different examples of different sort of tests. And so you can, with our free trial, you can look at all of that stuff also. But here we can load up our focus group example. And if you see this guy right here, that's actually Walter. That was done. But yes, so one of the pre-configurations that we come ready is focus group. So you have a main camera, which can be your DV cam, and then a secondary camera, which could be on the web camera or for the moderator or something like that.
This is kind of a loaded question, and I think you're probably going to need more information to answer this, but user asks, how many recorders or observers do I need? How many recorders or observers should I have? Is there some general guidelines that you can provide to guide them to figure out maybe how many recorders they should use? Or
there's no silver bullet. I would say the bulk of, for lack of a better word, expertise relies on the manager piece, okay? And that's going to probably be fewer people in your organization. And so whoever's going to do the primary analysis, at one point in time, TechSmith had 3 different usability professionals, and so 3 different manager components were very, very useful to us. Recorder would probably be kind of the middle tier, so maybe 1 or 2 managers. Recorder kind of depends on how many people are going to be moderating, how many people you have out there recording and doing the tests. And so that could be a couple more than manager because those don't necessarily need to be the analysis experts. I would say the bulk happens, the majority of the 3 pieces is observer because when we talk about this collaborative piece, what goes into building a website or what goes into building a piece of software or what goes into trying to look at a group if you're training them for, whether, you look at the Air Force Academy, a lot of stakeholders, as we call them. And so there's going to be a lot of people be interested in that. And so this observer component is really the super powerful piece. Nobody else out there is really doing this and paying attention to this. So I would say the bulk of the different components would be with that observer piece, whether it's designers, developers, product managers, and different instructors, whatever it is kind of the general rule, I would say. Kind of long-winded answer for you, but it really depends on your situation, your environment, and things like that.
And that observer piece really gives you a view into what that testing scenario is even like. For those people that haven't seen it before, that observer piece is just, oh, this is what it means to do usability testing. This is what we're actually measuring and looking at. So I think that's a nice part of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, if people had a usability lab, you could have maybe, you know, the one recorder, the 2 or 3 observers if you wanted to have a couple of remote people, but then multiple people using one manager in a particular lab if they wanted to. That's
it's not uncommon to see manager and recorder on the same computer. You know, so if I'm the person that's, whether it's a product manager or a lead designer that does the usability test, doesn't necessarily have to be usability professional. If you're that person doing that, and you have one machine, you would have participants come in, work on that machine, and then that's where all your data lives, and then very easy to bring that into manager with a couple other people outside of your lab. And keep in mind, your lab now consists of basically an office with a computer rather than extra hardware or microphones or anything like that.
Okay. It looks like we're almost through with the Q&A. If there's any other questions that you have, please feel free to use that Q&A portion to ask those at this point. We have another question about the survey questions. After the test is done and they answer that list of survey questions, whether it's you've customized it or it's the pre-built questions, where do those go? How do those get used?
So those, all of that is generated and put into Manager here. And so you see this SUS is an aggregated. So we put that in all of these surveys, and we look at, we can look at the average scores. So all that comes into Manager, and you're able to look at it like that. So you don't have to calculate that stuff manually or anything.
Okay, so if you have 10, 20 different respondents, it's easy to be able to figure out those averages.
Correct.
All right, great. Can you go ahead and show us one more time where we can go for some resources? Maybe if we have, we need some training on it, where we could go to see some of those resources online.
Yes, I will do this. The easiest way to do that is for me to unhide this slide and pull this up again. So hopefully the lag that everybody has. Right here are all the different resources that we talked about with their respective URLs. And so if you need those, you can snag it and grab those real quick if you need them. But all that's very searchable on our website. If you even go to morae.com, it'll redirect you to TechSmith website with it. But those have the URLs that I'll just kind of leave up here for a minute, and that's where you can find them.
Great. And if you do have any, just to echo what Jeremy said earlier, if you have any feedback about the product and there's things that you'd like to see added, or there's questions that you have, feel free to use that feedback.techsmith.com. I know that Jeremy looks at that. Dave looks at that as well, and all of our developers, in fact, can go ahead and look and see what our customers are posting and give you feedback directly. So if you have any feedback about the product, please go ahead and use that URL to do that. Once again, if you have other questions from other, if you have questions for other customers, you can use Twitter and use the hashtag morae to ask those questions of other customers. We have another question from John here. Is this presentation going to be available to the participants after today's session? And the answer to that is yes, John. We're actually in our wonderful TechSmith studio here. You can't see us, but we're in a wonderful TechSmith studio, and we appreciate the help of Kelly Rush here to get us recorded. We're using some nice HD cams, so this whole video will be available afterwards. You'll have to look at Jeremy and I. That will be the downside of the whole thing. But it will be made available afterwards in a nice high-quality version for you to be able to review and share with others. We encourage you to do that as well. So with that, we've answered all the questions. I want to thank Jeremy for joining us today. Once again, I want to thank everybody that was on this webinar. If you have any questions after the fact, feel free to use those resources that we had mentioned, feedback.techsmith.com. You can contact our technical support if you have any questions in that regard, or you can use Twitter to send things out to other customers. So thank you very much for attending. My name is Walter. This has been Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you.